Hey there, it is good to have you with me. Thank you so much for making time to be with us today. Let me just re-angle my camera a bit. There we go. We're going to be together for an hour and a quarter, maybe an hour and a half. So I hope you've been able to set aside that much time to join us for this. We are recording this, so you will receive the recording by email tomorrow, so that if you miss anything important, or maybe you have to step away for a moment to tend to a family matter or whatever, you'll be able to catch up. It'll all be there. So I would just love it if you would find that chat box and say hello. I just want to make sure you know where that is and how to use it, because this is an interactive webinar. I'm going to be asking you things along the way. And I want to make sure that you can communicate with me through that chat box. Take just a moment and grab that chat box and make sure that you just say hi. There we go, Lacey. Hi, thanks for that. I really appreciate that you said hi. Arisa, thank you. Anyone else want to say hello? I promise I don't bite. Okay. I would love to know, as the very first real question, hi, Marilee, thanks for saying hi. I would love to know if you have any iridology background. If you do, just let me know. Just give me the word background in the chat box, just to let me know that you've got some background in this. If you're really new, like you don't have enough information to actually do an iris analysis, then you probably don't have background. But if you've got enough to make an iris analysis, let me know. And if not, just give me a smiley face or something like that to let me know that you're still with me here. While you're letting me know what your background is, and if you're new, just give me new. There's Arisa, thank you so much. Appreciate that. New. And Lacey's new. Yes. And Marilee is new too. Fantastic. Fantastic. So good to have you with me. Thank you. So, little disclaimer to begin with, and that is that Cobblestone Health Limited, doing business as Iridology Education, is not responsible for any results, good or bad, you get from using the information I'm going to share with you. You alone are responsible for the results you get. If you use iridology, you are responsible to have the appropriate liability insurance. You are required to respect and adhere to local laws regarding the required credentials for the use of iridology and the offering of nutritional or supplement advice. There we go. That's the boring part. Janet says she studied with Dr. Jensen. Janet, welcome. So glad you're with me. You might see some differences. I didn't study with Jensen, but I did study with a first generation Jensen student. She had studied with him twice, way back 40 years ago, 4 decades ago. You're going to see a lot of differences perhaps in what we talk about today, as we'll look at some eyes, because there's been a lot of research since Jensen, and there's a lot of teachers still teaching what Jensen taught, and they haven't kept up with some of the new research. So I'm excited to have you with us today. Here's what we're going to do today. And we're going to jam all of this into our limited time together. I'm going to introduce myself because I am new to some of you. You are new. Some of you are new to me. We're going to talk about what is iridology and what is sclerology. We'll talk about why you probably came to this info mini class. We're going to look at eye anatomy because some of you are very new to iridology and we need to do some basics here. We'll also talk about the 3 foundational constitutions or colors to iridology. We'll look at why health professionals should use iridology and what can it show us? How is it helpful to us? We'll talk about what iridology will not show us. We'll cover a little tiny touch with the history of iridology. We'll cover what some of the standards for iridology training are. And then we're going to do 3 iris assessments. We're going to do 3 cases. And we'll talk a little bit about how I teach iridology to health professionals. Does that sound okay? Does that sound good? If that sounds good, just give me a smiley face or give me an okay in the chat box. And if there's anything else you would like us to cover, drop it in the chat box, because if I can possibly weave it in, I will. Again, if you're new to me, hello, welcome. I'm happy that you're here. I am one of only 9 level 3 IPA certified iridologists in the world. Up until a couple of years ago, they only had up to level 2. They added level 3. I jumped on it because I love teaching and I love iridology. And I wanted to be one of the first ones to actually bring the new research to my students. And level 3 does include some review, but it does have a lot of new research in it. I've been in the holistic health industry since 1981, and I've been coaching people all these years. I started getting interested in it in 1979, and it took me a couple of years getting married, having our first child, before I was in a time and place where I could begin studying and working with people. And I started teaching herbology and nutrition just a few years later, like just a few years after 1981, because there was so little information readily available where I live. This is way back before the internet, right? We had a couple of little tiny health food stores that were truly health food stores. They had a few supplements, but it was mostly foods they were selling. So I started this whole journey at about the age of 20. I had some health problems. The doctor couldn't seem to sort it out. I was still in university at the time. I was going to be a school teacher, and I ended up dropping out to get married just 2 semesters before I graduated. And so literally I could have, if I wanted to tough it out and finish that last 2 semesters, I could have come out with a bachelor's of education. I think school I was at was a Bachelor of Science with a major in education. But I actually realized that I didn't think I liked other people's kids enough to want to be with them all day, every day. For here, it's for 10 months of the year because school goes in end of August and doesn't get out till the end of June. But I love teaching adults. So I'm in the right place. Over the many years that I have been involved in holistic health, I've written and self-published many books. They're all currently out of print, except for the textbook that we use in the dynamic iridology course. I've also designed and taught many courses because, like I said, that is something that I love doing. I love designing curriculum. I love teaching adults. I love seeing my students take what they're learning and run with it. Nothing makes me happier, well, except for when my clinic clients get really great results too, right? And so, I've designed and taught biokinesiology courses and herb courses and color therapy courses. And I was a certified prenatal educator for a while. So I taught prenatal education courses, antenatal classes. That was a ton of fun because fertility and pregnancy are passions for me within my clinic. And so as we're going through our material today, I want you to pop in and drop comments in the chat box. Just let me know you're still awake. IPA makes teachers and iridologists, regardless of what level you're functioning at within their organization, they make us update our credentials every 2 years. So I just have my last 4 years worth of creds up here. I've been certified for many years longer than that, but they just started issuing badges as well. So we don't have all of that proof. I'm also a master herbalist and a professional member of the Alberta Herbalist Association and a nutrition professional affiliated with the Canadian Association of Holistic Nutrition Professionals and the Canadian Association of Natural Nutritional Practitioners. What I love about all of these organizations, IPA, the AHA, CAN-P, and CAN-PRO, is that each of them requires us to do updating. We have to do CEUs every year. It's not just pay a fee and be a member. We have to have certain credentials to join, and then we have to maintain those credentials by doing upgrades in the year. And so I really love that. Now, back to my original story, I had health problems at the age of 20. The doctors couldn't pinpoint what was wrong. I met a guy, he knew something about herbs. His mom was a lay trained herbalist. She had studied with Dr. Jensen, and she kind of started to guide me through things. And then I fell in love with the guy and we got married. That worked well. We celebrate our 44th anniversary this coming summer. So it worked very well for us. I'm not going to say iridology will do that for everybody, but it worked for us. So what is iridology? Iridology is, thank you, Arisa. We're pretty excited. I mean, 44, she's saying happy anniversary. So many of our friends didn't last 20 years. It's so sad when things can't be worked out. And so it's great. It's really great. We're happy that we're celebrating 44 this year. Back to iridology. What is iridology? It is the science of looking at the iris of the eye, of studying the iris of the eye. We want to be looking at what are the colors we see here. How is the fiber sitting in the eye? This gives us so much information about our clients' genetic predispositions. Okay, that's a really important thing to pay attention to. Genetic predispositions. When a client comes into us and we see their eyes, we always ask, what would you like my help with? And they give us, I call it the shopping list of things that they would like to have some support with, health symptoms that they want to get rid of. As I look at the iris, I can then see genetically how their body's put together. I can understand the pathway that their symptoms have taken, which organ did what, down the line till we get to the root of the problem. And then I can create a resolution here. I can help my client with dietary suggestions, herbal suggestions, lifestyle suggestions, emotional suggestions, and we can get to the root of the problem and get some really excellent results happening. We always want to remember that we never diagnose. As iridologists, we do not name disease. You'll hear a lot of people refer to iris diagnosis, totally wrong term, bad term, like wash your mouth out with soap, bad term, right? Diagnosing is something that the medics do. We aren't medics. We are holistic. And so we always want to be thinking about in terms of genetic potentials, of predispositions, of what do the symptoms tell us? What do the eyes tell us? How do they mesh? Right? And it creates a really lovely, deep conversation with our clients as we begin to understand them. I just realized I think I forgot to hit the record button. I did not. I am recording. Yes. Okay, fantastic. This is good. Okay. Thank you for your patience with that. I sometimes do forget to hit the record button, and that becomes a problem. Oh my goodness, I'm just having a technical moment here. Because I'm trying to get the small version of the chat box open and it's not letting me. There we go. Okay, sorry about that. Back on track. Sclerology. What is sclerology? Back when I learned iridology, we didn't look at the sclera at all. We did not pay any attention to it whatsoever. We now know the sclera is very, very important. When we are looking at the sclera and we see blood vessels in the sclera, depending on their shape, where they're sitting, we might see other things in the sclera as well. These all give us information. Blood vessels tend to be fairly dynamic. As long as the blood vessel is not significantly damaged, it may be able to act as a marker. And as it starts to fade, as we get results, we know we're getting results at the tissue level. Sometimes these blood vessels are very damaged, like a seriously varicose vein, in which case we're not going to be able to shrink it much at all, even though we're getting responses inside the body. We know that, that as blood vessels enlarge or become inflamed, that again gives us clues to where there may be problems. And the shape of that blood vessel, what it's doing, may give us clues as to what kinds of problems we might be facing here. Really, really important that in order to do sclerology well, we need to be able to track the sclera. So this is where having eventually good iridology equipment, iridology photographic equipment, a good camera will be important, because I can look at these once. I don't remember what I had for breakfast. How am I going to remember what I saw in a client's eyes a month ago or 6 months ago or 2 years ago? So we always want to have good camera equipment so that we can get good photos of the iris and the sclera so that we have something to refer back to. And so oftentimes, again, as we're making progress, we will see changes in the iris, or sorry, in the sclera, And we need to have both of these because it's going to help us understand our client better. Now, many times when we're looking at iridology, what I hear from clients, and I want to know if this is why you're here. Many times my students actually are looking for a non-invasive way to assess their clients, right? Maybe they've already studied iridology and it's not working for them. And they wonder if they're missing something, or maybe they just think they're doing it wrong. Or maybe they're just curious and you're here today because you wanted a low commitment way to look into iridology without having to talk to me one-on-one or to commit to a course. So I would love to know if any of those are what you're here for. And really seriously, if it's number 3, that's fine. I love honesty. So which of these would explain why you're here? Or is it something else? If I know why you're here, again, I can tweak this presentation on the fly and can do a better job of making it fit your needs. So in the chat box, let me know, what was your driving reason for being here today? And if I've missed listing yours here, give it to me in the chat. You can send it to me privately. Akemi says 1, non-invasive. Lacey says 1 and 3, non-invasive, but you wanted that non-threatening way of learning something about it. So good. And Louise says 3 and learning more. Fantastic. Fantastic. So good to have you here. And thank you for that. Marilee says 1 and 3. Wonderful. Thank you for that. I really appreciate the interaction here. So good. So good. So with this, if your main reason for being here is that you've heard about or experienced iridology as a diagnostic tool, and you're looking for a low invasive way to assess your clients, you might be surprised to learn that iridology can also save you hours and hours of time. When I teach iridology, I teach it at a professional level that will allow you, once you finish my program, to do an appropriate iris assessment with your program creation in about 20 minutes. That leaves a lot of time inside your appointments for developing rapport and for gathering other pertinent information from your client. Now, here's the bonus, and that is really that when you can do an iris assessment, an appropriate iris assessment, that means you're not paying attention to every detail in the eye, because every detail is not important at that given moment. But when you can do an appropriate assessment and get your program, your recommendations created on the spot, it will be a succinct enough program to get results and to not overwhelm your clients, so they will want to come back and continue working with you for follow-ups. So that is so, so important. Maybe you've already studied iridology and it's not working for you. This is something I take very, very seriously. Because if you've studied iridology and it's not working for you, you're feeling a little lost with it, you're feeling a little overwhelmed by it, you don't know how to integrate it into your appointments, that's not your fault. I'm going to be a little judgmental here. It's your teacher's fault, right? That should be a part of the mentoring and the training, in my opinion. That's how I teach it. So of course, I think I do it really well. I've had many students who were previously certified by other instructors, but they weren't taught actually how to use iridology in clinical practice. They were able to spit back the right answers on a written exam to get certified, but they had no idea how to use it in a clinical setting. And that makes me sad, because those students were feeling like they failed. And so they come into my course and we fix that. We help them get their feet under them and help them get really confident with the information and the application of the information. A lot of teachers won't teach the application because it takes time. And they're busy. They don't want to invest the time, perhaps, to do that. You're going to see why things are a little different in my world. And if you're here, and you just want a low commitment way to investigate it further, that is just fine. I want you to consider tonight as being a little bit like, I don't know how old any of you are, and I'm not going to push you for that information in a public forum, but you know, when I went to university, I applied to 2 different universities. They both had the program I wanted. They were both really good schools. They were both in cities that I wanted to go to school in, and I got accepted to both. The thing that won me over to this school I went to was they invited me down for a weekend. I had to pay my way to get there, but once I got there, it was all expenses paid with, I'm going to say wine and dine, but there was no wine involved. You know, they put us up in some on-campus accommodation. They gave us meals. They put us through workshop. We got to meet our faculty advisors. They gave us an introduction to the school and the people we would be working with, and that won me over. And so really, you know, that was just huge for me because I loved that city already. I'd been to it many times and I really loved it. I really did want to go there. So it was great. So you need to do the same when you're looking for an iridology course. And that's a part of why you're here. You should be able to talk to the teacher beforehand, like one-on-one. In a group setting is great, but one-on-one, and I'll invite you to do that later. You should get to sample their teaching style, which you're going to see a little bit later on today. You should get a sneak peek at the learning materials. Basically, you should have that opportunity to tour the campus and not feel necessarily obligated, but to go and gather information, compare it to other schools, other teachers, other programs, and make sure that the program that you choose is the best fit for you. And so if that's why you're here, I'm really glad you're here. Think of this as an interactive open house. I've got stuff I want to share with you, and I hope you've got a pen and paper to write it down and drop any questions you've got in the chat box so we can talk about those as well. And you know what? The facts of the matter are, iridology is a powerful assessment tool. Confidence can be developed. Most of you have been with me on weekly mini classes, so we're going to just start jumping into some good stuff. All righty. Oh, before we jump into some really good stuff, actually, this is good stuff. This is Karen Choate. She's one of my certified grads. She's IPA certified. This is what she said. First off, she just posted this in a social media site for me. She said, Judith, I just returned from a regenerative detox course where iridology is implemented. I spread the word about what a wonderful teacher you are. Most people I talked with did not have anywhere near the same experience with their iridology education. They had no support, unanswered questions, and a lot of confusion. Mostly they finished their classes not knowing how to implement what they had learned. I feel so absolutely blessed to have been taught by you. I feel totally supported, even still, as I've graduated almost 6 years ago now. I don't think there's anyone out there practicing, educating, and teaching iridology like you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart. I am eternally grateful for your never-ending patience and support. So I had to press further. I then had to ask her, how has learning constitutional iridology helped you in your business? Right? It's fun to learn new things, but if it's not going to help you in your business, is it really worth investing in? Karen said, iridology has helped me to understand the relationships between different organs and organ systems more in depth. Iridology also gives me an advantage of seeing the potential for different genetic traits and qualities that may be underlying. By observing the constitution, for example, you can extrapolate how the person's body will likely respond to applications of healing methods. Therefore, it has helped me to expand my knowledge and increase efficiency at providing more precise recommendations for health-oriented options. Now, Karen is a CNHP, and she specializes in digestive health. So that's very cool. I really, really appreciated her comments there. All right, so the eyeball. We're not going to do all of the eye anatomy. We do that in module 1 of the dynamic iridology course. But what we want to be aware of is a couple of things. When we talk about the sclera, it is the white, very firm tissue that helps the eyeball hold its shape. It's very, very tough. At the front of the sclera, it becomes clear, and that is the cornea. Of course, it needs to be clear because we need to see, and light needs to come through that cornea. We have here the iris, which of course goes all the way around, and it has an opening that is the pupil, and behind the pupil we have the lens. So we are going to be looking at the iris itself. And again, we do a lot more detail with the anatomy of the eye because we need to understand it. when we are doing an assessment, but that detail is in the course. There are 3 basic eye colors. If you've been scoping out iridology websites, you may have seen this. Each of these eye colors has specific inherent, primarily physiological, but somewhat emotional energy kinds of traits as well. So a blue-eyed person is going to have very different traits physically, potentially, from a brown-eyed person. And then here we have the mixed eye, what you might have heard called a mixed eye. We call it a biliary eye. And we'll get into the why in just a moment. But these are the primary constitutions, the 3. You'll notice that even in a blue eye, we can have other pigments, other colors sitting in this eye, and that's perfectly fine. Where does green fall? Excellent question, iPhone. Green is actually a variation of blue. I want you to consider what colors go together to make green. Blue plus yellow. And so if we know we've got that blue base and we've only got the yellow pigment on top, the yellow gives us specific information added on to what the blue means. So I started learning iridology in 1979. Constitutional iridology had not yet reached Canada. I am in Canada, just in case you didn't know. And I don't say A, just so you know. Iridology itself was not widespread up here. Constitutional iridology was not even widespread in the US. It was just being brought in. I studied and embraced what was available. Again, I studied with a first-generation Jensenian, and so I learned the Jensen. I started to get frustrated with it after about 5 years because I would look at an eye and like this, and I'd go, you've got this problem, 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 you've got this problem. And it was, no, I don't know, I don't know, I don't know, I don't know, I don't. And it was like, well, what am I doing wrong? So after about 10 years, I was about ready to walk away from iridology and go, I'm just being a charlatan. I'm not going to do this. So I would see an eye like this. And again, we were taught to call these lesions, and every lesion was a pathological problem that was happening right now. But it wasn't. I'd been taught it was, but that's not really what it was. We had been taught that these lines that are inside indicated healing, and that over time we would see more of these lines form. Even over 3 or 4 or 5 years of working with a client, and I bought an iridology camera very early on, we didn't see that happen. And my clients were doing programs that were very, very rigorous. We were told that we would see the eyes change. And I never, ever saw them change the way I was told they would. That really, really started to get under my skin. So here's what we know about blue-eyed people. We know that their inherent traits focus on the mucous membranes and on their acid levels and on their lymphatic system, amongst a few other things, but those are some of the key areas. So what kinds of symptoms might you see if the mucous membranes were not doing their job properly? I'd like to see some answers in the chat box. What kinds of symptoms might you see if the mucous membranes are not doing their jobs properly? Arisa is asking, what if their eyes change colors? Arisa, that's an interesting question. In all of the years I've done iridology, I have only seen eyes add pigment. I've never seen pigment go away. So when you say if their eyes change color, we would need to understand what you're exactly speaking about. Okay. Asthma could be one of them. Yeah, that's great. Anything to do with veins and heart and lymph. Yeah, absolutely. Good one, Liliana. Right. Very good. Yeah. Your body has so much mucous membrane in it. We might see sinus issues. We might see recurring chest or lung infections. Your whole intestinal system and even your stomach is lined with mucous membranes. right? So we could see anything there as well. So we do see more things like asthma, allergies, arthritis, skin, and kidney problems. And so the next thing we need to know is, what is the client doing to take care of their health? We need to understand that having blue eyes doesn't guarantee that they will have those problems, but they could have those problems if they are not taking good care of themselves. Remember, the eyes are a genetic blueprint. They show us where the strengths and weaknesses are. So if this client was doing the fizzy pop and refined sugar diet, I would expect they would have problems. If this client instead was doing a very holistic diet, lots of fruits and vegetables, depending on where they live on the face of the planet, that would be adjusted by the climate they live in. Are they doing good kinds of proteins and things like that? And so we want to know what they're doing, because that's also going to impact their genes, right? It's going to impact how their genes manifest. We can add more layers of information by evaluating the presence of other colors in the iris and the way fibers are laying in the iris. So in constitutional iridology, we know that these markings, which we call lacunae, are inherited. They show areas that may have challenges at some point in time. These lacunae won't change. When they are placed as they are in the iris, they suggest greater risk of endocrine imbalances. So this person, because of where these are sitting, is more prone to having endocrine imbalances. Right. So that would then lead to certain questions. It might, depending on what our client has asked for help with, we might need to ask about hormonal issues, blood sugar issues. We certainly need to know what they're doing for their health. If this person is on track and they're doing good things, of course, we encourage them to stay on track. We might have some refining of what they're doing to help them experience even better health. But if she's not on track, she may need coaching. We may need to work on her blood sugar balance. We might need to revamp her diet. We might need to get her being physically active. We might need to support her digestion. We might need to encourage her to be more creative, because this also suggests that she has a creative streak, right? As she implements some of the specific changes that her symptoms and eyes have asked for, she will begin to see her health improve, but she will not see the irides change. The lacunae are not going to go away. Does that make sense? How does that fit? So Arisa is saying sometimes his eyes are bluish green to hazel. That will be the impact of light on the pigment that's in his eyes, because pigment accumulates in the irides, but it doesn't dissipate. So we'd be looking at the quality of the light, the type of light that is hitting his eyes. In my early iridology training, an eye like this that had uneven pigment would have meant this person was really toxic. They needed to do a cleanse right now. And in my early training, if we said that if this person would do that cleanse, these eyes would become blue. Oops. All of the clients that I put on really heavy duty cleanses, often 2 or 3 heavy cleanses a year, improved dietary patterns, improved lifestyle patterns, we never saw eyes lighten up towards the blue. That's what I was taught, and that's what I was using at that time. Back then, though, I didn't understand photography. I had a camera, I could do iris photos, but I didn't understand photography. What we've learned is that changing the amount of light, changing the direction of the light, changing just all kinds of things like that, changing the quality of the light can change what these eyes look like. You can even take a photo like this and take it through Photoshop and adjust it so that it almost doesn't even look like the same eye. It would still have the same fiber structure, but you can make the colors look so radically different. And so we also knew that, or we learned that different brands of film, okay, I'm dating myself, different brands of film would develop differently with different color saturations. We know that even digitally, I have 2 large computer screens on my desk. They're the same brand, but not the same model. They display color differently. So when I've got a client in my office and I've taken a photo of their eyes and I put it up on the computer, I need to then go back to my client's face and decide which of my computer screens is showing the color the most accurately, right? Because they're quite different. One is much more blue, the other is much more yellow. So I was getting really frustrated with all of this. And then I got to start learning constitutional iridology. This is what we would call a biliary eye. So this person, somewhere in their recent ancestry, parents, grandparents, had a blue-eyed parent and a brown-eyed parent. And that's how we end up with the biliary. This means this person has a little more tendency towards liver and kidney insufficiencies. In this particular eye, we also see tendencies towards sympathetic nervous system stress, as in they spend a lot of time responding in that sympathetic nervous system. And in this particular eye, we also see some predispositions towards digestive issues. Now, if we know that foundationally this person is a little bit prone to some liver or kidney insufficiencies or inefficiencies, what kinds of symptoms might you see? What could you see if this person had liver issues or kidney issues? What kinds of symptoms would that manifest as? Just waiting for bags under the eyes. Yeah, that could be a little bit the kidneys and adrenals, I'm guessing, but yellow eyes. Yeah, if their liver's really not functioning well, they could be jaundiced and the whites of their eyes could be yellow. Good one, Arisa. Good one. Ascites. Oh, Marilee, yes. Absolutely. Ascites. Yeah. Diabetes. Yeah, because the liver actually plays key roles in balancing the blood sugars with the pancreas, right? So yeah, you might see more of a tendency towards blood sugar imbalances, which could work their way into something like diabetes. Yeah, very good. Love this. I'm really loving that you're all seeming to understand, your A and P. This is so good, so good. So again, we can identify the markings in an eye, but it's not a case of one mark equals one problem. And that's why we need our anatomy and physiology, which you people are demonstrating very well that you understand. This is so good. Because we need to understand then how the how the organs interact with each other to get the client to the symptoms they've got, right? We're also going to need a family history. We're going to have to ask, is there anyone in your family who has a problem in this direction? I actually prefer the question, is there anything running in the family? Is there a personal or family history of anything? I like the broad question first, because then I get all of the really nasty things out of the way, like heart disease and cancer and diabetes and things that could be very upsetting for us to talk about if we see indicators in the eye. From there, the iris and the sclera, again, help us to understand why the client has the symptoms and help us to understand how best to begin strengthening and rebuilding the body to get the client to have the best health possible. So this eye also suggests a predisposition towards being sympathetic dominant or responding in the sympathetic nervous system. What kinds of symptoms might we see for someone who is functioning largely in the sympathetic versus the parasympathetic? What kinds of symptoms might you see? I'm making you dig a little bit here. Slow digestion. Yeah. Sympathetic shuts down digestion. Absolutely. And it might even go so far as they don't actually want to eat because it doesn't feel good. Digestive issues can be a part of that. Absolutely. Absolutely. Anything else? Anything else? These are really great answers, by the way. I like this. Sleep problems. Yes. Yeah, sleep problems. That's a good one, a really good one. So remember, your sympathetic nervous system is your fight, flight, freeze, and fawn, right? And so when we've got those, we are going to see behaviors, but we'll also see physical things. We could have heart arrhythmias. We could have high blood pressure. Absolutely. Good answers here. And so when we see things like that, so let's pretend this client actually has high blood pressure. This client, we've also said, is also prone to kidney and liver. Both of those things can contribute to high blood pressure. So we're not just going to give something to relax them, although they may need some help relaxing and relaxing the tension in the blood vessels. But with what we see in their eyes, they may also need something to help the kidneys work more efficiently and something to help the liver work more efficiently, right? So the blood pressure is not just a one-off thing. It's a how many different systems could be involved, likely are involved, and how do we work with them all together to get the best result possible. Does that make sense? If that makes sense, give me makes sense in the comments box. Fantastic, fantastic. Yeah, really good. Here we have a beautiful brown eye. We would call this a hematogenic eye. And I love that you're all saying this is making sense. So good. Hematogenic eyes have their primary tendency for imbalance is liver and blood chemistry. They also tend to be a little more alkaline. So if we've got someone who tends to be a little more alkaline, I want you to think really deeply into your anatomy and physiology. If someone is tending to run a little too alkaline, what is one huge thing, very important thing, that is likely not going to work very well? One function in their body. It has to do with digestion, but digestion is not going to be the right answer. Stomach acids. Stomach acids is a part of it. Yeah. Yeah. But if we're talking here, I want to take it deeper. When we're talking alkaline, we're talking too alkaline at the blood level. If someone is too alkaline at the blood level, what happens? Could be bacterial overgrowth, possibly. Anything else? This is a tough one. This is a tough one. 10 points to anybody who gets it. Cognitive function issues. Interesting. That would be affected, but that would be an end symptom. All right. I love that you're working to find an answer here. We need a certain amount of acid in order to hold our minerals. And so if we are too alkaline systemically, we don't hold our minerals well. Calcium, magnesium, zinc, boron, you name it, any mineral, we don't hold them well. And if we don't hold them well, we run into problems with every organ system ultimately, correct? We need to hold our minerals and we need to hold them in balance. Those minerals particularly affect the endocrine system. And so we can expect that if someone tends to run a little too alkaline, we are likely going to have issues on some level with some part or all of the endocrine system. In the old type of iridology, and doing a Jensenian bit of iridology, I would have said this person is very stressed and they have weak digestion. And I would use these words: you're really stressed. We need to resolve that stress. You're going to have a nervous breakdown. Your digestion, that you're not assimilating things well, which is true in the constitutional as well, but we don't say it quite that way. We've got indications that this person holds on to things. We've got all these dark areas. Now, there's just so many things in here that we need to be aware of as we're doing it. In constitutional iridology, we look at iridology in the context of the client. So this would be a client, again, who is a little bit sympathetic dominant, prone to some endocrine hormone imbalances, might be a little bit prone to burning through B vitamins, vitamin C, calcium, and magnesium too quickly, and not holding the calcium and magnesium. So we need to find ways to get in and help them hold that really well. So why do we want to use iridology? Well, we want to use it because it helps us understand those genetic predispositions. It stimulates client-specific conversation to help us understand our clients' needs on a deeper and more succinct level. This is so important. When you do iridology the way I teach it, you can throw away your intake questionnaire. You would always have your client sign an informed consent form, that release form that says they know who you are and what you do, and that you don't diagnose and that you don't prescribe. You're not a medical doctor, but you can throw away those generic one-size-fits-all questionnaires. And iridology helps us understand how best to support the body with foods, supplements, essential oils, lifestyle, and emotionally. I had a client in today. We've been working together for maybe about 8 or 9 months. And when he came in, he's in his mid-60s. He's done a lot of herbs over the years, and he's done iridology before with other people. But he came in and he said, he's a restaurateur. He said, you know, my hands, I'm getting to where I can't even work in the kitchen anymore. And it was like, ooh, that's not good. We did his iridology, and I hit on so many things that resonated with him, but that no other iridologist had mentioned. And then we looked at his nutrition, and it was like, well, this has got to go. This has got to go. You need more of this. You need more of this. And we started rebuilding, introduced some supplements. And literally within 2 or 3 months, he came in and he went, look at this. And I went, that looks good. How does it feel? He said, all of my joints feel like I'm 20 years younger. I feel like I did in my mid-40s. Right. And that's how the iridology helped us. We hit on a lot of emotional issues with him. Because of the family business that he's in. There's a lot of time bomb emotional stuff there. And as we uncover that and open it and talk about it, it gives him a place to work through it so he can go back to the restaurant and be good for another few weeks, right? And then he'll come back in and we'll work on things. We'll tweak his program a little bit, but we'll do mostly talking now because his program is pretty solid and he just needs someone to literally, for lack of a better word, off gas to, right? Because he can't do that at work. And he just, he was in today and he said, he paid me the highest compliment ever. There was a well-known iridologist herbalist here who retired many years ago. And he used to go see that herbalist. He said, you are better than that fellow who's well-known. And I went, oh, it makes me feel good to know that I've done that kind of good work for this client, right? So good. What can iridology show us? And that's what I want to teach you. I want to teach you how to be that good. That's my goal, to teach you how to be that good. Iridology helps us understand what foods and lifestyle habits will likely be harmful to a person, as well as what kinds of supplements may be ineffective. So we need to know the negative as much as we need to know the positive. It can show us where the inherent strengths and challenges of organs and glands and tissues are. And it can show us the tendencies that have been passed down through the last 3 to 4 generations and whether they are resolving or whether they're getting more deeply embedded, right? And if they're getting more deeply embedded, we've got work to do. But if they're resolving, we've got support to do. Iridology can show us tendencies towards sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous system imbalances. We've seen a little bit of that today. It can show us tendencies towards circulatory, hormonal, and glandular connective tissue lymphatic system insufficiencies. And it can show us if there's a tendency towards things like elevated uric acid, elevated cholesterol. Now, we do not diagnose these things, though. We need to remember that we don't diagnose these things. When I see markers that suggest the possibility of elevated uric acid or elevated cholesterol or imbalances in different directions, I always ask my client to go back to their medical doctor to get lab tests done. Now, we are blessed in that we have socialized medicine here, which means that all of our basic health care it comes out of our taxes. It's paid for from our taxes via the government, right? And I know many of you live in places where you have to pay for your own lab tests. So that can be a stumbling block in some areas. But if you see these predispositions, you don't even need to tell your client what you're thinking. Really, you can just begin working, right? You can talk about foods. And you can talk about it generally. You can say, well, these are foods that I like to use when I suspect a client might be walking towards elevated cholesterol, or when I suspect a client might be moving towards type 2 diabetes or insulin resistance, right? So you're not diagnosing, you're using very broad terms, but your client will hear it clearly. What can we not do? Well, we can't diagnose current or past pathologies. This is not a crystal ball, folks. We cannot tell if someone has surgery or broken bones. We cannot determine blood pressure readings or cholesterol levels from looking at an eye. We cannot show if arteries are blocked or hardened. The sclera, however, might have a little bit of information about this, but again, it's not a hardcore diagnosis. It's a suggestion of a current trend. We cannot assess for hemorrhage, stroke, or heart attack. We can't determine if a woman is pregnant or has had an abortion or a miscarriage. Now, your eye doctors can get a good idea if a woman is pregnant by looking at the retina, but we don't look at the retina. We are looking at the front of the eye. We cannot determine if there's a tumor. We cannot determine if there are kidney stones or gallstones. We might see kidney tendencies. We might see gallbladder tendencies. As we get to know our client's emotional status, we might have a feeling that they might be going towards gallstones or kidney stones, but we don't have the x-ray vision. We can't see those stones for sure. And we cannot confirm if someone's had a surgery or a broken bone in the past. We cannot diagnose the presence of yeast or parasites. We, again, might see tendencies in the sclera. That's a level 3 concept. We cannot confirm current virus or bacterial infection status. We cannot distinguish gender, age, predict lifespan, or impending time of death. And we cannot determine if someone needs surgery. Those, again, are all medical things, and we don't get to do that. We need to be able to refer out if we need information in those ways. Sclerology can give us an indication if an infection has been sequestered. So if there's something in the body and the body fought off most of the infection but couldn't get to all of it, and the body has built a wall around it, it's kind of gathered it together and built a wall around it, we may see tendencies towards that in the sclera. And that's one of the reasons that sclerology works so well with iridology. So again, the language of iridology, we never diagnose, we never name a disease. We always assess predispositions and inherent tendencies. And we use iridology to help us ask questions. Client comes in with their shopping list. We ask them, what would you like my help with? We ask them, is there a history of anything running in the family? We look at the eyes, we put the symptoms together with the eyes, and that gives us more things, more understanding with which we can then ask more questions to get the deeper information that we need to get to move forward with program creation. Iridology is a fast and insightful way in the hands of well-trained practitioners of assessing clients' needs. Now, you can assess your client's eyes. You can do an iris analysis without special equipment. Okay, you can actually get decent photos with your smartphone. They're not great, but they're usable. You can use a lighted magnifying glass. Right, so there are ways to do this. However, we never assess a client's eyes without their permission. So, if you're standing and you're talking to a friend, or you're at a store talking to someone who works in the store, you're not looking at their eyes and, doing an assessment. That is taboo, bad, don't do it. Really disrespectful. We need to respect privacy here. When we do an assessment, we see our client on so many levels, physically and emotionally. and we're asking questions that can be very personal, I try to lighten that a bit, and I will tell my clients, by the time I'm done with you, I will know more about you than your mother, right? And they kind of chuckle with that, and that's good. It's critical to have that college level anatomy and physiology to understand the body and the physiological processes. And that proof of A and P is required by the International Iridology Practitioners Association should you decide you want to certify through them, which of course I encourage all my students to do. I teach the curriculum that prepares you for certification. Lillian is asking, what do you use in your program? Do you recommend diet changes, herbs, supplements, any homeopathic remedies? I focus on diet, herbs, supplements, lifestyle. I sometimes use aromatherapy, sometimes use flower essences. I do not know enough about homeopathic to do that safely or well. Although, as a homeopath, if you have the homeopathic training in the scope of the course, as we are practicing together, when we get to where I'm saying, Liliana, when you look at this eye, you see this marking, this marking, this marking, what would you recommend from your training? And I expect you then, if you've got homeopathy under your belt, to come up with some homeopathic recommendations for that client, right? Because I don't have time to teach herbology and nutrition. We touch on them lightly. And I want you to learn from the get-go how to integrate iridology with what you already do. So I'm always getting you to pull through. I had a physical therapist through the course. She did beautifully well. And I would ask her questions in terms of, what would you do as a physical therapist with this? And she would come up with her physical therapy answers. You just ask, okay, but if others do, that would be great to learn. Absolutely, right? So good. Good question. Thank you for that. Quick history of iridology, because as you're looking at iridology, you're going to find that there's a lot of conflicting information out there. And so we've got the roots of it go back to China, Greece, Egypt, India, thousands of years ago. We know that there's been research going on in Italy, Germany, and Europe. Sort of our modern day go around started in Hungary with Ignaz von Petschle. You've probably heard the owl story. I'm not going to go into it. It has been disproved so many times that we just need to let it go. It's the foundation of why people say irides change, but our irides are not the same as an owl, and it's not possible for that to happen. If that were possible, we'd have veterinarians and people who work in these bird sanctuaries where they bring in the birds that have been injured. They would have replicated what Ignaz said he saw, but no one's ever reported it. So we've got different herbalists in Australia, or iridologists rather, like Dorothy Hall. In America, we have Harry Wolff and Bill Caradota. Harry Wolff is an American-born German who got his hands on one of Joseph Deck's books, who was one of the original German researchers in iridology, and it was written in German, but Harry knew how to read it. So he read it, he started using it, he grabbed a hold of Bill, who was at the time a registered pharmacist on his way to becoming a naturopath in Washington State, and Bill glommed onto it, and they started teaching, and that was the very early foundation of the International Iridology Practitioners Association. IPA has come a long way since Bill and Harry started it. I am still in touch with both Bill and Harry. Bill was my constitutional teacher. Standards in iridology, this is so important. Iridology is not a regulated industry, except in Germany and Russia, where only medical doctors and healthcare, which I understand is their version of a naturopath, are allowed to practice iridology. At this current point in time, through the rest of the world, iridology is not a regulated industry. You don't need anybody's permission to teach iridology or to practice iridology, and herein lies the problem. There are many people who are teaching weekend workshops, the very basics of outdated information, no less, giving a certificate at the end, and people are practicing iridology with that information. Not cool. That's not a very high standard. IPA's mission is to increase and communicate knowledge concerning the art and science of iridology while promoting excellent international standards. So I really, really love that. As a constitutional iridologist, this is the map I teach from. This is based on the work of Bill Caradonna. He gave me permission to update it several years ago because there had been research that needed to be reflected in the iris map. Many of you have seen the Jensen map. It is divided into such tiny, tiny parts. There are times when that is useful, but there's not very many times when that's useful because they're so complicated. When we're looking at constitution, we're looking at how do the organs interact with each other. I'm not as concerned about what is the hand doing, what does the outer ear do, what is the knee doing. My client's going to tell me if there's a symptom for that, right? I'm more interested in how do the organs interact, and that's why this becomes a very functional map. Now, with this, while I'm chatting here, I'm going to post a link in the chat box for you. I'm going to give you just a little minute here while I'm talking. Grab that link, go in and drop your details in, and then you can download the dynamic iridology map and have a copy of it for yourself. Okay, so you want to grab that. And anybody who's watching this on replay is going to miss out on getting the map because I can't put it into the replay. So with this again, we want to be working with how the organs interact with each other. And that's the constitution. That's what constitution is. It's how the body is put together, how it's working. We know the right eye reflects the right side of the body. We know the left eye reflects the left side of the body. Okay. We know the head areas are at the top. Anything on the midline is down the middle. Anything that's not on the midline or spans the body is going to be on the outside. Things that are in the lower torso are in the bottom. You'll find it's very similar to the Jensen maps and other maps that are out there. It's just that we've left out all the filler, all the little bits that don't have metabolic activity. Okay. We also have on here 7 zones. These 7 rings give us information about different functions within the body. And when we then look at everything we've got going on in here, you'll notice that this is a perfect human body. The ascending bowel comes up the right-hand side, just like your ascending bowel comes up the right side of the abdomen. The transverse colon comes across the top, just like it goes across the middle of your torso. The descending colon comes down the left side of the body, and the small intestines are in the middle of everything. Right, so that is your basic constitutional iridology map. This is, again, the one that we use in the dynamic iridology course because it's the one that makes sense. I also make sure that you're familiar with the Jensen map in the course because the Jensen map is the one that you will see referred to in the certification exam. It's just not going to be the map you're going to want to use in your clinic all the time. And so now, did y'all grab that? Did y'all take a minute to go and click that link and grab it while I was talking about it? That's going to set you up to receive the email where you can download the link. Fantastic. Absolutely fantastic. You're very, very welcome. So glad that you are accessing that. So good, so good. So the dynamic iridology assessment system, we've talked about it a little bit. We're going to talk about it a tiny bit more here. This is the only live online fully mentored, that's an important adjective in there, fully mentored course for anyone who's got an anatomy and physiology course, college level A and P under their belt, who wants to work with clients, right? And the purpose of this course is to teach you everything you need to know about iridology to work well in the clinic so that you don't have to do what so many other teachers teach you, which is you look at your client's face, maybe you grab pictures of their eyes, you send them away, then you go off and you spend 2 or 3 or 4 hours assessing those photos, writing up a big fancy report to bring back to your client in their next appointment, overwhelming them with information. If it took you 2 or 3 or 4 hours to write this out, it's more information than your client wants to absorb in one sitting. And it's probably more recommendations than they can do comfortably in the next month. So when I teach this, it's so that you don't have to work unpaid overtime, so that you can stop on overwhelming your clients with programs they just simply can't stick to, so that they can actually do the program that you're outlining for them. They can stick with it. We get compliance. And if we get compliance, we get success. And as they are successful, they want to keep coming back. They want to build their program. They might come in for 4 or 5 or 6 appointments, maybe 1 a month for a while, and then they're feeling great. They disappear for a while. But you know darn well that in a year or 2 or 3, when things are starting to shift, or if they hit a crisis, they are going to come back to you, because you helped build them up in a step-by-step logical sequence where they could see that what they were doing was having an impact, and you did it in baby steps that they could do and be really positively successful with, right? I've got clients that have now been with me for 4 decades. I've got some that started with me in my Jensen days. Bless them for sticking with me. I've got clients that are 3rd generation, where I've now had 3 generations of the family come through my office. I love this. The vast majority of my clients are word of mouth. I do not advertise my clinic. I've got a website, but it just sits there. So Marilee says, I'm an RN and have A&P, but I don't have a background in holistic natural remedies. Oh, Marilee, this is so good. You've got the A&P. That's the first thing. That's what you need. We do touch on introducing herbs and nutrition in the scope of the program. And that gives you that basic foundation that you can actually use to start working with clients. It also will then help you to see, where do you want to focus? Do you want to do more with the nutrition first, or do you want to, like, you've got your iridology under your belt, is nutrition the next thing you want to do, or is the next thing going to be the herbs, or is there something else that you want to add as a tool in your tool belt? I've had many nurses through the program who don't have the holistic background, but they want to become holistic. They've got that holistic mindset. They just don't have the holistic training yet. So this is amazing. The A&P is the thing I can't teach you. I don't have time to teach you A&P at the level you need. If you've got the A&P, I can teach you what you need. All right. The next course is actually starting on June 27th. Now, you'll find a lot of iridology teachers who teach the course. Actually, it's mandated that it needs to be 35 hours in total for level 1 and level 2. And a lot of teachers will teach that as a 5-day, just 5 days, 7 hours a day, just get in there and get it done. I do not think that is the best way to learn iridology. My course is 50 hours long for just the coursework to cover level 1 and level 2. We meet for about 2.25 to 2.5 hours each week, once a week for 20 sessions, right? So you have time to learn what we've studied, to start practicing it, to come back to the next class with questions that you might have, things that show me that you're processing information and you want to go deeper, right? And we're building incrementally, little bit by little bit, every week, and giving you time and encouraging you to practice and study in between classes. So 5 o'clock to 7:15, roughly Mountain Daylight Time. Registration, I'm not going to post a registration link here for you, because we need to have a one-on-one chat. I need to, if you want to enroll, I need to have a Zoom with you. And I do that because I really want to make sure that this course is a good fit for you. Sometimes in the conversation, I can see that this is not the right time or space for this student, that if we get them into the course, they're not going to be successful. And for those, I will encourage them to wait for the next course or the one after that, right? My goal is for my students to be successful. And so that's another reason why I insist that they have the anatomy and physiology before they come to me. Anyone that I've ever had who did not have A&P back when I wasn't kind of so picky typically dropped out by about week 6 out of week 20. Nobody wins in that situation. Nobody, right? So you're going to find in your chat box another link. This is the link to schedule a one-on-one Zoom meeting with me for us to talk about where you're at, what you want to do with this, what's your vision for how you want to proceed, so that we can make sure we can talk to each other, make sure we're going to work well together. You get to vet me. And this is your campus tour, right? When we meet one-on-one, I get to vet you, make sure that we've got good energy. And if we've got good energy, I will give you the link to enroll in the program, right? Let's do a quick case study. We've got 3 cases that we're going to look at here. Does that sound okay? Anyone want to see 3 cases? We're going to do a lymphatic, which is the blue eye, a biliary, which is the mixed, and a hematogenic, which is the brown. If you want to see cases, yes, please, on the iPhone. Thank you so much. Great, great, great. Okay, so when we look at an iris, the first thing we're looking for is, what is our primary constitution? This is a lymphatic eye. We already said that they're more prone to mucous membrane kinds of things than lymphatic things, right? We also want to look at how the fibers are sitting. Are there gaps between the fibers? Do we have flower petals in here? Or do the fibers sort of mostly radiate straight out? We want to look for pigments. Where are the pigments sitting and what color are they? Because different colors in an iris give us information about how different organs want to interact with other organs. We need to look for shading. Are there areas where it's a little bit darker or where it's brighter? We also want to know, what are the client's concerns? Why did they schedule the appointment? What do I see in the eye that gives me information? What questions does this trigger? What strengths do I see? What are some areas that I think might need ongoing support? And what is this client doing for his health? So this is a male, 5 feet 11 inches tall, weighs 175 pounds. He was 64 years old when we took these photos. And he'd actually been a client of mine for a few years, but he had disappeared for about 4 or 5 years, which is very common. And now he was in trouble. His hemoglobin A1C was 7.2, which means pre-diabetic. His glomerular filtration rate was 61. And that's how the kidneys are functioning. The lowest acceptable is 60. Once you get to 60 or lower, you're into the early stages of kidney failure, kidney disease, chronic kidney disease, right? His potassium was slightly low. He was on a diuretic because he also had blood pressure problems. So the doctor did say that he was pre-diabetic. The doctor had put him on metformin, and the metformin gave him diarrhea. So the doctor switched him to Glumetza and Giardians, which seemed to be okay for this fellow's gut. They put him on Trandolapril for his cholesterol, sildenafil because the blood pressure medications had made it so he could not perform sexually. So now he needed Viagra, that's sildenafil. And he was on Mylan torvastatin for cholesterol. I strongly recommend, if you're going to work with clients, that you have a drug reference book on your desk. I need to update mine. These come out every couple of years because you're going to need to understand their drugs. You're going to need to look them up while the client is sitting there, look them up, understand a bit about the drug, how it works, and what the contraindications are. Are there any foods or vitamins or herbs that they should not be taking while they're on that medication? Because we don't get to tell our clients what to do with their meds. I also notice a lot of throat clearing. So when someone is constantly going, I'm pretty sure that they have acid reflux. That's one of the key indicators that they've got a reflux problem that doesn't necessarily include heartburn. So his diet, breakfast was a cinnamon bun or muffins for breakfast, or Cheerios, breakfast of champions, right? His lunch was a sandwich on white bread with some kind of processed lunch meat or tuna or egg salad. And his supper was often fast food. His wife works as an air hostess, a stewardess, a flight attendant. That's the current word for it. I know there's a right word for it now, flight attendant. And she does 4-day trips. So she'll be gone for 4 days at a time. And when she's gone, he does fast food or pizza. When she's home, he'll do meat and potatoes and veg, right? He drinks about 3 liters of water a day. So what we see first is we've got the beginning of a slight milky film at the top edge of his eye, and a little bit up here as well. Very slight, very, very slight. This suggests that he for many years has not handled his carbohydrates well. This is in the sclera. And if he's not handling his carbs well, that's usually from the liver. And the liver can take those carbs into cholesterol or into insulin resistance. And in his case, it was taking it both ways. He's got this ring here, tells me he doesn't digest his proteins well, or let me rephrase that. He is prone to not digesting his proteins well. We need those proteins, right? But he wasn't getting very many that were good anyways. This tells me that his intestinal tract likely doesn't work well. It's probably on the sluggish side genetically, and that he's likely going to have what we call carb farts. So he's going to pass gas, probably going to have a slightly sweet smell as things are fermenting in his intestinal tract. He has these rings in his eyes that tell me that he tends to be a little bit of a sympathetic responder, right? So burns through his B vitamins, vitamin C, calcium, and magnesium. So what did we do? We first suggested that he needed protein and vegetables for breakfast. Probably 3 eggs and some sauteed veg. Something like that would be brilliant. Leftover chicken from the night before, leftover veg from the night before. Make double at supper time, right? Suggested that he could snack on an apple with clean nut butter. So none of the nut butters that have the sugar and the fat and the who knows what in them, but just something that's just a really clean nut butter would be a good snack. Suggested that for lunch, a large salad with real meat in it would be a good idea. And I suggested, buy the organic salads in the bag or in the box. That's how we can buy them in our grocery store with the mixed leafy greens. Super easy for when his wife isn't home. Not that his wife does all the cooking. He just finds it easier to food prep when his wife is there. Supper, protein and veg. I got him to do the mantra, protein and vegetables, right? Because that's what he needed. More protein, more vegetables. So what did that look like? It could be a homemade stew or a stir fry. He could roast the veg and barbecue the meat, right? And portion control. Well, you don't need so much portion control if you're doing the lower glycemic vegetables and the good quality meats. Also got him to chew his food. For supplements, we added L-arginine to relax the blood vessels. We added berberine IR to work on the insulin resistance. And he's a security guard. So I said twice a day, a 30-minute brisk walk. He said, that's super easy to do. I can walk the perimeter of the campus. That's done. That's great. So when I saw him again a month later, we added some hydrochloric acid and some digestive enzymes to help him break things down. But I chose an enzyme that had herbs in it that would support the liver because of what we were seeing in that perimeter of his sclera, of his cornea. And a month later, when he came back, his blood pressure was down to 118/74, which was the most stable and lowest it had been in a long time. His blood sugars were down below 6.3, so still not in the totally safe range, but certainly much better than where we started. And his hemoglobin A1C down to 5.9, which again, not as far as we want it, but certainly improving. So we then added resistance training. Suggested there's times when as a security guard where he's in the office watching all the computer screens with all of the security cameras, and he could take stretchy bands in there and do some stretchy band resistance work. Coolio. 2 years later, so he's on this program, he's doing really, really well. 2 years later, his doctor says, well, whatever you're doing, it's working. They took him off the Giardians and the Glumetza. They reduced his blood pressure medications. His triglycerides were improving, and they reduced his cholesterol meds. And the doctor said, you keep this up and you're going to be off these meds in 6 to 12 months, which was, of course, the goal. And we did get him there to where we actually had him off. We've got him off the meds. So good. So good. He's so excited. This is one of my clients who has been with me for 4 decades. She was in just a few months ago, and we were talking about, when did we meet? We were both having babies at the time, and we talked about which baby she was bringing in, which baby I was having, where was I living at the time. And yeah, she's been with me for 4 decades. And that's what we want. We want them to come in for 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 appointments, get really on track. If we do it right, they disappear for a few years. And then things happen, they're getting older, things start to come undone. They have trauma in their life, they need support, they come back in. We'll see them for 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 appointments again, get them back on track, send them off. And so there's an ebb and a flow here. When she started coming back, maybe about 4 years ago now, she wanted to lose some weight. She put on some weight. She wanted it gone. Her blood pressure was up. Her cholesterol was up. Her triglycerides were up. Her hemoglobin A1C was up. And her doctor wanted to put her on prescriptions. Now, this client took a lot of the same nutrition and herbal classes that I took years ago when our kids were young. She's well read. She knows her stuff. She just needed some support. She needed some help sifting through to be able to get to the right place. And so, again, we always need to ask that personal or family history question. Her eyes aren't toxic. These are biliary eyes. They are the mix of the blue and the brown. They show inherent potential, but notice she's got this white milky film. This again is liver saying not handling carbs very well. We're not going to reverse this in the eyes, but those carbs can be going into triglycerides, to sugar imbalance, to cholesterol, or all of the above. Now, because I've known her for so many years, we could dive in really hard. She just needed guidance. She didn't need teaching. She needed guidance. There's a huge difference. And so what we did is we really reduced her carb intake, really increased her protein intake, and we got her thinking and using her better quality fats and oils, avocado, using actual avocado or avocado oil, grass-fed butter, things like that. Got her to start walking for 30 minutes a day. She got a little puppy, started walking her puppy. We put her on some omega-3, the Bear Burn IR. We worked on her gut biome. We did hydrochloric acid for digestion. We did a broad scope digestive enzyme as well, and got her to eat protein at breakfast. She lost 20 pounds in 3 months. And when she went back to her doctor, all of her labs came back in the normal range. And her doctor was so impressed, so pleased. We were so happy. About a year later, there was some significant family stress with one of her grandchildren, and it threw her off the rails. She fell off all of her program, and a couple of months later, she had a heart attack. There's some really significant emotional reasons for heart attacks. They're not always tied to cholesterol. And so with the heart attack, fortunately, they live about 2 minutes from a really good hospital. Her husband had worked in industry. He knew the symptoms of a heart attack. And it was like 2 a.m. He carried her out to the car and took her to the hospital because an ambulance would have taken 30 minutes to get there, even though they're so close to the hospital, right? That's just how slow things can be. And of course, she was fast tracked in. She ended up on 9 medications, and they have put the fear of everything into her that if she stops these meds, she's going to die. And so our goal with her, again, using these eyes, is the dietary work first. She's too afraid now to introduce supplements. So we're simply working on diet, working on activity. Of course, after a heart attack, you don't just launch back into doing high-level physical activity. You have to introduce it slowly. But we're working to get her totally back on track. It's just a process. There's ongoing family stress for her. And a large part of my support for her is being a listening ear and just being generally supportive and encouraging her to do good self-care. We want to get her to where the doctors will look at her numbers for cholesterol and triglycerides and blood pressure and everything. We want to get her numbers to where the doctors are saying, well, you're doing really good. We could experiment with reducing things. And I think we will get there, but it will take time. Okay, our last case for today, beautiful hematogenic eyes. Again, with this one, this is an Asian woman. She was in her mid-30s, and she and her husband really wanted to have a baby. They had been to the fertility clinic, and when she came to see me, you know, all I knew was that she wanted to have a baby. And so as we're looking at her eyes, and I'm looking at the fact that she's a sympathetic responder. Now, those of you who've got Jensen training are going to say, oh, she's full of parasites. No, that's not what these mean. But she does have these radiating into the ovary area. So we know that ovarian function is likely interrupted. So as we were working with her, and I'm thinking, sympathetic responder, burns through B vitamins, vitamin C, calcium, and magnesium. I had to ask her if she was doing a prenatal vitamin. She was. It was sort of just a cheapo drugstore one. But I also know that with these eyes and with some other things that I see in here, that she probably doesn't methylate her Bs well, her folate and her B12. So I knew I needed to get her onto a good methylated B vitamin. And fortunately, the prenatal vitamin that I use is methylated, which is great. But that methylation is a liver enzyme thing. So I had to wonder, with this little bit of a white haze we're seeing here again, that's 3 for 3 today, what her liver was doing. And so I asked her about her blood sugars, right? Because we said that if the liver's not doing its job right, it can take those carbs into blood sugars, insulin resistant, triglycerides, cholesterol issues. And she said, oh yeah, they've diagnosed me as type 2 diabetic. She's a petite little thing. She's got beautiful hair. She doesn't look like a classic type 2 diabetic, because then the next question is, well, if they've labeled you as type 2 diabetic, have they also labeled you as PCOS? And she said, oh yeah, they said I've got PCOS. They've given me metformin and they've given me Clomid. And that's it. Well, her cycles were 90 days apart. That's an infertile cycle. You're never going to get pregnant on a 90-day cycle. It just doesn't work. And so as we're doing this, we looked at her diet. White rice, sugary sauces. Breakfast was a sweet roll with a juicy drink, not a real juice. I mean, diet was just atrocious, super high carb. So I asked her, what had they taught her about blood sugars? And she said, oh, nothing. They just said, take metformin. She's going, oh my goodness. Oh my freaking heck goodness, right? And so we did a diet revamp. As we were doing her diet, there was some markings in her sclera that made me think that she was flirting with a yeast infection. So I asked her if she had a yeast infection or if she had a history of them. She said, oh yeah, I always have a yeast infection. Well, okay, type 2 diabetes, PCOS, yeast infection, it all adds up, right? All adds up. So they had been trying for 3 years to have a baby. They didn't want to wait another minute if they didn't have to. They came in as a couple. Her husband was the sweetest, gentlest fellow ever. So I said, okay, you've set the bar high. You want a baby. You want a baby as quick as you can. We need to do some serious, serious dietary work. So I had to put her on a yeast protocol first. And as we're going over the diet, her face is getting longer and longer. And I can just see that she's overwhelmed. And her husband just reached over and took her hand and said, honey, don't worry. I will take over all the food prep. You just eat what I make for you. And I'm going to eat the same way because we're a couple. And I just went, oh. I said to her, you know, he's a keeper, right? Anybody who's willing to do that is a keeper. So he did. He took over all the food prep, totally revamped her diet. We got her exercising for 30 minutes every day at work. She would just walk up and down stairs in the tower that she worked in for 30 minutes. We got her menstrual cycles from 90 days down to about 32, 33 within just a couple of months. We could see clear ovulation on her BBT charts. We knew she was ovulating. Took us about another year before she got pregnant, but she did get pregnant. They had a beautiful baby boy, 4-hour labor delivery, like first contraction to baby in arms, 4 hours. Whoa, kind of rocked her world, I'll tell you. At any rate, the fact that we worked every month for 18 months to get her pregnant, they followed all the directions I gave them. We used the eyes as a key reference piece. And then even when she was pregnant, an appointment every month to keep her healthy. She did not go gestational diabetic. We kept that away, which was brilliant. And we actually continued appointments for about 3 months afterwards, right? And so it's just so brilliant that we can use the eyes to guide the questions to help us create the protocols, the programs to help our clients be well and to teach our clients what they need to know. Right? So, so important. So that is how we can use iridology. Some examples. So the dynamic iridology assessment system, again, it's 2 and a quarter to 2.5 hour live webinar classes recorded for playback on demand. We all have lives, right? So if you need to miss a class for some reason, no big deal. The recording is posted within 24 hours. I only accept 10 students per class group because my students deserve to have as much attention as they need to learn this really, really well. We do live group mentoring sessions twice each month for all of my students and grads. So it's a scheduled time where anyone who's done my course can come back and ask questions or just hang out with us. We have a student and alumni MeWe group. So MeWe is a platform like Facebook. They just don't mind our data and we can speak freely. We don't get censored. The course includes, as my gift to you, a 225-page digital textbook. You can download it and you can print up one copy for yourself. It includes 45 pages of digital study notes. Again, you can download those and print them up for yourself. We call them the cheat sheets. And we have the certification for the IPA, the mentoring for IPA certification. Most teachers do not include certification mentoring. You pay for your tuition for your course, and then you pay to be mentored separately. I just roll it all into one because I would really love it if my students all certified. If you choose to not certify, that's fine. Just know that that's available to you. And I will walk you through the process of certification when that time is right. It's a process. It's not just a one exam kind of a thing. What camera do you recommend and what is the cost? Do you recommend iridology software? Good questions, Liliana. I personally like the camera that Matthew Dahmer from Iris Labs in England or France, depending on the day of the week, that he produces. I don't know the cost of it. And the reason I say that, he encourages you to buy your camera and your lens locally on sale in your own currency and to only buy the illuminator from him. Right. And so that's really cool. You can watch the sales depending on where you are, a Black Friday sale or whatever. I do not recommend using iridology software. I've looked at several of them and they cannot do what you will be able to do when you have completed my course. Sophia Perez Villars posted this as a testimonial on the IIPA site. The commitment that Judith has for her teaching is extraordinary, and the amount of support you get from the iridology course is fabulous. The material is very clear and thorough. The pace of the course is dynamic, but with enough time to integrate all the parts. As this was my second iridology course, I was not sure if the course would be just an add-on, but it has exceeded my expectations. I've learned lots from the course material and classes, expand previous knowledge, and gained more confidence. I can see now how this course has helped me to get better answers from my clients and to design an effective protocol in very little time. Highly recommended for beginners and advanced. Kimberly Zadatlus, if you're wondering which iridology course to take, you can stop looking, you found it. Judith is an excellent instructor with many years of experience. She is a caring and compassionate person who is dedicated to the field of iridology and her students. I personally practice both Eastern and Western physiology medicine and was very impressed with the layout of her program. She makes it easy for her students to balance work, life, and study. Kimberly has a master's degree in radiology, and she works as a radiology technician a couple of days a week, and she has her own wellness clinic that she runs the rest of the time. Then we have Sharon Bimrose. I'd already taken iridology as a part of my studies as a naturopath. She's from Australia. However, Judith's course, Confident Nutritionist Dynamic Iridology, we changed the name. It's now Dynamic Iridology Assessment System. Surpassed my previous training in structure, content delivery, documentation, and support. Judith taught in a manner that I could understand visually and auditory. Dynamic iridology was well delivered, inspiring, and motivating, giving me the much needed structure to the knowledge I had already learned over the years. Dynamic iridology also provided me with the most up-to-date iridology information along with the added bonus of Judith's extensive experience and of holistic health. An absolute appreciation, Judith, for making me a better iridologist. So while all of those students had iridology training before they came to me, most of my students do not have iridology training before they come to me. We start at ground zero and we build from there. And it doesn't matter. If you've got training and certifications elsewhere, you're not going to get to jump the line and go further on in the program. You start at ground zero so that we can make sure you've got the same foundation that everybody else has so that the course will make sense. Again, the only way you get that registration link to, and the only way you actually find out the tuition cost is by having a one-on-one with me. And so I'm posting that link again in the chat box. And this is your chance to chat with me. It's not a high pressure sales call. It is truly a vetting call for us to decide, is this the right fit for you? And can we work well together? And again, if it's a good fit, I'll give you the registration link. If it's not a good fit right now, we'll talk about when might it be a good fit. If there's something you need to do first, I'll coach you in that direction as well. My goal is not to grab your tuition money. My goal is for you to be successful at whatever you do. And if that includes studying iridology with me, then I will give you heart and soul in an effort to help you be successful. I will invest as much as you invest, right? Should I wait until I have A&P under my belt, or can we go ahead with the one and do the one-on-one? I would suggest it would be best if you had the A&P under your belt before we do a one-on-one. Now, iPhone, if you want to private message me your email address, A&P is anatomy and physiology. Anatomy and physiology. Okay. iPhone caller, I don't see your name. If you want to PM me your email address, I will PM you, or I will email you a link to the A&P course that I recommend if you weren't already enrolled in one. Okay. I'm Tessa. Oh, Tessa. Yeah. Okay. Great, Tessa. Yes. Fantastic. Yeah. Fantastic. So if you're already enrolled in the A&P, when you get to about, I think it's about module 9, 8 or 9, so you're like 75 to 80% through and you know you're going to get it done, that's a good time for us to have your one-on-one. I have the link, I'm enrolling soon. Great. So when you're about 3/4 the way through, that's when we want to have a one-on-one so that we can encourage you to get that course finished, right? And talk about what is the next enrollment date that would work. All right. Fantastic, Tessa. Appreciate that. Are there any other questions? Okay, so Louise also wants the A&P link. Does central heterochromia or central heterochromia have any significance in iridology? Absolutely, Marilee. Tons. The actual color of the heterochromia gives us information, and the placement of the heterochromia gives us another layer of information. And when we intertwine that with the client's symptoms and other things we see, it gives us a real depth and breadth that we wouldn't find elsewhere. Good question, Marilee. It sounds like you've got a bit of iridology under your belt. Yeah, so good, so good. Any other questions that I can answer for you? I'm looking forward to meeting many of you one-on-one in a Zoom call to talk about the course and to give you more details and more specifics to see if this is a good fit for you. Thank you. I'm glad I took this intro session. Liliana says it gives me an idea about the depth of the info that will be taught in the course. Yeah. What you saw in those practices, those cases we did, skimming the surface, so much depth, so much breadth. Arisa says, do you mind sending me the A&P? You betcha. I can sure send that to you too, Arisa. Happy to do that for you. Just a bit about the A&P. It is a self-paced course. You work through it at your own pace. it is suggested that it would take an average student about 84 hours to complete. So if you work really hard, you probably wouldn't be ready for the end of June. Well, if you spent like 5 hours a day on it, you could be ready for June 27th. And Lily wants that too. Fantastic. I can do that for you, Lily. And, but you could certainly be ready for the next go round. It is self-paced. From that perspective, I say it's a tough course because so many people have problems doing things if it's up to them to get it done, right? But if you have the drive to get it done, then I can guarantee you dynamic iridology will be an easier push for you because you're not doing it by yourself. Okay. Tessa says, why do you suggest this A&P course in particular? Because number one, IPA has approved it as meeting their requirements for number of hours and content. And number two, if you are able to focus and work well, you could have it done. If you could do 3 hours a day, you could have it done in a month, right? And not everybody could do 3 hours a day. I get it. But if you could even do 1 hour a day, you've got it done in 3 months, right? So I also have seen graduates from this. Let me rephrase that. The A&P is from a nutrition school here in Canada. I've had some of their graduates through my iridology program. They know their A&P, right? They really get it. So I know it's a good course, even though it is the version you're doing will be the home study virtual one. Louise says, so good. Thank you, Judith, for your time and passion. I followed you for a time now. This has been so informative. So good. So good. Okay. That's what I was after. Thank you. Excellent. Okay. Yeah. So yeah, that's why I send people to this A&P. I don't even get commission or kickback for sending students to that course. I just want them to get a course that I know is solid, that's going to give them the foundation they need to come into my course and do really well. Right? Because your success is what this is all about. Right on. Super, super, super. Okay, Lacey says, thank you. This was very interesting. I need to book a session for myself. LOL. And Lacey, I don't know if I'm assuming you made an iris assessment for yourself. We can do those virtually if you can get decent photos with a smartphone. Yeah. So if you want that, shoot me a PM or an email or something and let me know. And I'll send you some links to some videos I produced that show you how to get photos with a smartphone so that we can do a virtual session if you don't live close to where I am. Fantastic. Great session. I love the interaction today. Thank you so much for all of your comments and questions. Love, love, love that. And, when you're one of my students in the course, you're going to find out that questions are another passion of mine. I love it when students have questions. So you've made this just a joy this evening. Thank you for that. I have got homework to send some of you the A&P link, and I'm hoping that we'll be having one-on-ones with the rest of you very soon. Take care and have a great evening. You are all very welcome. Bye for now.